Hello. Today I'm going to talk about an aspect of higher education that often goes unnoticed, but holds the power to transform the entire learning experience, building trusting relationships between the instructors and students. One of the things that I'm going to talk about is the importance of trusting relationships. So, say you have a classroom where trust is the cornerstone of education. It acts as the scaffolding upon which a robust educational framework is built. It creates an environment where students feel safe to express themselves, ask questions, make mistakes, foster a culture, and continuous learning. This can be done with any age of students, in my opinion. I read an article when I was doing research for this that said having an instructor that can relate with situations in life because you are both on the same, I guess I want to say, age scaffold is really important, especially when it comes to teaching adult learners, because I can talk to my seventh graders and say, well, when I was in seventh grade, but they're like, well, that was when dinosaurs were on the earth, Miss Hammock, when it really wasn't, because it wasn't that long ago. But they still can't wrap their head around the fact that I used to be a seventh grader also. I'm going to talk to you now about the best practices for building relationships. How do we go about cultivating these trusting relationships? I'm going to say it starts with a genuine connection, knowing that you care for them and letting them know that you care for them. Sometimes showing your emotion. It's not professional, and I'm glad that this didn't say how to be just professional, because my students sometimes know when I'm upset. When my daughter was in the hospital and she was going to give birth, I came in and I was like, hey guys, so my daughter's in the hospital and I'm a little bit nervous, and if I have to leave or I have to take a phone call, this is why. And I think that I built that relationship with them because they knew, hey, she's a human, she's got a life and she's got stuff going on. And I would do that with grown-ups. And it's funny that I call them grown-ups instead of adults. I guess that just goes to show who I talk to all day long. But I just see that. I would walk into a classroom and say, hey, I have a daughter that's pregnant and might have a baby soon. And they could relate and say, oh, I remember when I became a grandparent. And then we could go on our lesson. Or sometimes when I go over a lesson and I can relate a real life situation to the lesson, and they could say, oh, well, that happened to me. I also learned while reading about this stuff that becoming a part of the community and letting your students see you out in the community helps build these trusting relationships inside. And it was a Dr. Chang that stated all this. And I went and looked more into this, and I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be out in the community and they see me out in the community, could I invite my students out into the community, especially like with science, like just doing some kind of conservation with the community would help. Understanding the needs of adult learners. Well, as an adult learner, I think that I can bring some information and insight here, because transitioning as an adult learner is recognizing unique aspects of having a family, having a job, having to pay bills, making dinner. That's something that kids don't really have to do, or they shouldn't have to do. Different viewpoints. I believe in respecting each other. And I'm a Christian, and my students know this, but I know that not all my students are Christians. I have a student that came in one day and was reading the Quran. I think it's the Quran. And I was talking to them about it. And I was like, I've never actually read that or seen that, but it's something that you're interested in. Would you want to talk about it? And he said no. And I said, okay. And I just said, well, what is it? And he told me that it was a type of Bible. And I was like, okay. So then I had another student start talking about the Mormon Bible and how they were reading it. So we started talking about it. And I was like, okay. And I actually had another student make a remark. And I'm just going to say this. Again, I teach seventh graders, and this is about adult learning. But I see adults all the time at church. I have coworkers that are adults. I'm in these classes with adults. And they make remarks just like some of these kids do that hurt other people's feelings, even if they don't act like it hurts their feelings. And I just remind my students that this is a safe atmosphere and we're going to respect each other's boundaries. As I said, I'm a Christian and my students know I'm a Christian. We went through evolution And when we were going through evolution, and I work in a public school, and if I work at a college, I plan on working at, are there public colleges? Maybe that's something I should look into. But I don't know what I'm really allowed to say, because in public school, it's supposed to be the kids ask you questions and then you can answer. Well, I don't typically let it get that far. I typically just say, well, guys, it's my job to bring you all of the information. And while we talked about evolution and the Big Bang Theory, and that's something I can't really wrap my mind around, I believe in God, and that's something that some people can't wrap their mind around. But when I look at it at the end of the day, whether you believe in the Big Bang Theory and evolution, or you believe in God, don't you have to believe in something unbelievable? Because we all had to start from nothing at some point. At some point, you have to decide which option makes more sense to you and which one do you want to believe. And that's really hit home with some of my kids. Like, I really do have to think of something unbelievable, because if I'm thinking about the Big Bang Theory, there were just these rocks, but where did the rocks come from? If I believe in God, where did he come from? And I tell them that I take comfort in the fact that since I do believe in God, that when I get there, then I'll know. And if it's just that he's just always been like it says, then it's just that he's always been like he says. And they ask me questions like, well, Miss Hammock, what if you're wrong? And what if there is no God? Then I say, well, then I think that I just won't know anything. Like, it'll just be dark, like when you sleep and you don't remember that you dream. So I do believe that it's important to build trusting relationships with your students. And I do believe it'll be different building relationships with adult students than my 7th grade students. But I still think that we need those relationships no matter what age the students are that we're teaching. And I hope that helps. And thank you for listening.